The Canadian Rockies are renowned the world over for some of the best hikes and scenery you can find. But if you're into multi-day hiking, there is one trek that should be at the very top of your list, the Rockwall Trail in Kootenay National Park. If you need an excuse to finally take the plunge and book it, then stick around and I'll give you my hot take on this iconic trail and whether it's worth your time. Spoiler alert, it is. This is the trail underfoot. The Rockwall Trail is a 55-kilometer long backpacking trail that takes you through some of the most stunning scenery in the Canadian Rockies. Here's what you can expect: glaciers, waterfalls, wildflower meadows, pristine lakes, and of course, the massive limestone cliff that gives the trail its name. We hiked this trail over 5 days and 4 nights at the beginning of August, and it was one of the best treks I've done. Okay, so before we can even begin to talk about the hike, I need to talk about how to get there. We did the hike from north to south, starting at the Paint Pots trailhead and ending at Floe Lake. The problem is that there are no shuttles or public transportation of any kind to get to and from either trailhead. If you're in a group and have 2 vehicles, then it's no problem. You just park a car at either trailhead. But we had only 1 vehicle and we had to park at Floe Lake and try and hitchhike to Paint Pots. We stood on the highway for quite some time without any luck, but ended up getting a ride from a nice group that had just finished the trail. Okay, so day 1. It starts at the Paint Pots and hikes to Helmet Falls over about 14 kilometers. The first section of the trail was easy and flat, following the Vermilion River through a forest of lodgepole pine and spruce. After about 3 kilometers, you reach the Paint Pots, a series of ochre-colored pools that were honestly a little underwhelming. The trail continues over Ochre Creek and then climbs steadily up to Helmet Creek. The forest gradually gave way to open meadows with views of Mount Whymper and Stanley Peak. You reach Helmet Falls campground after about 4 hours of hiking, or longer if, like me, you stop constantly to take photos. The campground has a communal cooking and eating area as well as bear-proof lockers. It also has access to creek water and outhouses, which were frankly pretty awful. These amenities were present at all the campgrounds along the Rockwall Trail. It's also located at Helmet Falls, one of the highest waterfalls in Canada at 352 meters. If I'm honest, this first day was not all that interesting. Most of the time was spent climbing through the forest and we questioned the hype of this trail. But the second day was one of the more challenging and rewarding days on the trail. The first part of the day was a steep climb up to Rockwall Pass, gaining about 500 meters in elevation over 4 kilometers. The trail switches back through forested slopes until it reaches the tree line, where it opens up to reveal stunning views of Helmet Glacier hanging above Helmet Creek Valley. This is where we realize that this trail is actually as majestic as they say. As you approach Rockwall Pass, you see why this trail gets its name. A sheer wall of rock towering over the trail, rising 900 meters for as far as the eye can see. Its jagged peaks and cliffs create an awe-inspiring backdrop for hikers. The summit of Rockwall Pass is at an elevation of 2,230 meters after about 2 to 3 hours of hiking from Helmet Falls campground. This is a cool spot for a break. From here, the trail continues downhill towards Tumbling Creek Valley. The descent was steep and rocky, but becomes more gradual as you go. Eventually, you come across a scene of an open valley with a refuge hut in the distance. This was actually one of my favorite views along the hike, and the subject of this t-shirt, drawn by my friend Shane, who was on the hike with me. Tumbling Creek Campground was the final destination for us that day, and we got there after about 11 kilometers and 4 or 5 hours of hiking. This was a lovely campsite positioned next to a decent-sized river. We even had plenty of time that afternoon to heat some water and enjoy a warmish shower, thanks to someone in our group bringing a camp shower along. The third day starts with a tough and steep climb up to Tumbling Pass, gaining about 600 meters in elevation over 3 kilometers or so. The trail snakes through meadows and scree slopes until it reaches the tree line, where it opens up to reveal more views of Tumbling Glacier and Mount Drysdale. Tumbling Pass tops out at an elevation of 2,300 meters and then descends into Numa Creek Valley below. It was here that we took a little detour, hiking up to the edge of the scree ledge to the right and hiking towards Tumbling Glacier. It gave us absolutely incredible views before we continued our trek to the valley bottom. From here, the trail continues for quite a while through open meadows, but one's rewarded with beautiful views of the mountains. Eventually, it arrives at a steep descent into Numa Creek Valley, where the Numa Creek campground is nestled. All in all, you're looking at a hike of 8 kilometers over 4 or 5 hours to get to Numa Creek, with about 350 meters in elevation gain and a further 600 meters lost. The fourth day is one of the most scenic and satisfying on the trail. The first part of the day was a steady forested climb up to Numa Pass, gaining about 700 meters in elevation. I remember the bugs becoming particularly bad towards the end of the climb as you approach the pass, so make sure you have plenty of bug spray at the ready. Numa Pass is at an elevation of 2,360 meters, and from here you have your first glimpse of the Rockwall Trail's gem, Floe Glacier and Floe Lake on the other side of the pass. Numa Pass is a great place to stop for lunch. I also recommend ditching your packs and climbing up Foster Peak, which gives you vast, jaw-dropping views. From Numa Pass, you gently descend towards Floe Lake, and if your timing is just right, you'll see meadows teeming with unbelievably beautiful wildflowers. We were there at the beginning of August, and we were absolutely spoiled in that regard. The Floe Lake campground is a beautiful one, with campsites peppered all around the lake. The bugs were horrific here, so we spent most of the time at the lake shore, which seemed to be a refuge. The lake was a refreshing place for a swim and to relax. This is the most popular campground along the trail, and for good reason. Floe Lake is a turquoise-colored lake that lies at the base of Floe Glacier and the Rockwall. It is surrounded by towering peaks and cliffs that create a stunning contrast with the water. For that day, you're looking at almost 11 kilometers and 4 or 5 hours of hiking. I recommend getting up early the next morning when the lake is perfectly still and the light is spectacular. In fact, this is the site of one of the best photos I've ever taken. After leaving Floe Lake on day 5, you're in for a steep but beautiful descent before the trail levels out again. We discovered wild strawberries and blueberries along this section and were thrilled to dine out on wild fruit along the way. As you can imagine, this is also a major draw for bears, so make sure you're making lots of noise and you have your bear spray handy. The closest we came was to see a black bear slowly making its way on the opposite direction on the other side of the valley. From here, you're in for a long and relatively uninteresting walk to the highway and trailhead where, hopefully, your car is still safely parked. Make sure to do your fellow hikers a favor and offer to drive some hitchhikers to the next trailhead on your way home. So what are my overall impressions? Well, it was amazing. It was easily one of the best hikes I've ever done. The views are incredible and varied, and I highly recommend you give it a go. But what do you think? Have you done the Rockwall Trail? What was your favorite part? Or, if it's still on your list and you have any questions, leave a comment below and I'll do my very best to answer. See you next time.